Well, the following account of Operation Pegasus is taken from Vietnam Studies Air Mobility, 1961 to 1971, by Lieutenant General John J. Tolson, Department of the Army, Washington, D.C., 1999. Library of Congress, catalog card number 72-600371. First printed 1973. CMH publication 90-4, for sale by the Superintendent of Documents, U.S. Government Printing Office, Washington, D.C., 20402. And here I'll show it to you, and if you can read it. Okay, I've just highlighted some of his story here about Operation Pegasus. On March 2nd, he went to Da Nang to present his plan for the relief of Khe Sanh to General Cushman, Commanding General, 3rd Marine Amphibious Force. In attendance at the meeting was General Abrams, Deputy Commander, U.S. Military Assistance Command, Vietnam. This plan was approved in concept and provisional troops allocation were made. To accomplish the mission, the 1st Cavalry Division would be augmented by non-divisional units. The 1st Marine Regiment, the 26th Marine Regiment, 3rd Army of the Republic of Vietnam Airborne Task Force, and the 37th Army of the Republic of Vietnam Ranger Battalion. In all, I would have over 30,000 troops under my direct operational control. We constructed a sand table model of the Khe Sanh area. Made several air mobility trips into the surrounded Marine garrison to coordinate directly with its commander, Colonel David E. Lowndes II. Many different elements were involved, and all would have to be pulled together under my command on D-Day. If we wanted surprise, speed, and flexibility during the actual attack, everyone had to understand their part of the plan and the control procedures. It was especially true of firepower. A lot of things were going to be moving through the same airspace: bombs, rockets, artillery shells, helicopters, and airplanes. We had to assure ourselves that none got together inadvertently. It became evident during the planning that the construction of an airstrip in the vicinity of Ka Lu would be a key factor for the entire operation. This airstrip, which became known as Landing Zone Stud, had to be ready well before D-Day, 1st of April, 1968. It also was necessary to upgrade Highway 9 between the rock pile and Ka Lu to allow pre-stocking of supplies to Landing Zone Stud. Calling this a landing zone is a gross misunderstatement, for Landing Zone Stud would have to be a major air terminal, communication center, and supply depot for the future. 1st Cavalry Division Engineers, the Seabees, United States Navy Mobile Construction Battalion, 5, and the 11th Engineer Battalion, in order to correct an impression given by newsreel coverage at the time, I must point out that the only safe way to get into Khe Sanh Combat Base was by helicopter. I usually chose to land in the Special Forces area. C-130s were either delivering their loads by low-altitude extraction or by parachute. The runway was the most dangerous and exposed area of Khe Sanh. By day 6, the construction personnel had finished an airstrip 1,500 feet long by 600 feet wide, ammunition storage area, aircraft and vehicle refueling facilities, and extensive road nets into the vicinity of Landing Zone Stud. The Seabees, which had been augmented with the very heavy equipment, accomplished the lion's share of the work on the airfield. The actual intelligence on the enemy in the area was very vague and expressed in generalities. 1st Squadron, 9th Cavalry, operated from Landing Zone Stud in gradually increasing concentric circles up to the Khe Sanh area, working all the time with air cover from the 7th Air Force or the 1st Marine Air Wing. cavalry squadron was almost the only means available to pinpoint enemy locations, anti-aircraft position, and strong points that the division would try to avoid in the initial assaults. As part of the reconnaissance by fire, known or suspected enemy anti-aircraft positions and troop concentrations were sought out and destroyed either by organic fire or tactical air. The thoroughness of the battlefield preparation was demonstrated during the initial assaults of the 1st Cavalry Division, for no aircraft were lost due to anti-aircraft fire or enemy artillery. However, the inherent capabilities of the Air Mobile Division presented the enemy with a bewildering number of possible thrusts that he would have to encounter. I'm going to skip forward. There's a lot of who went where and all that, and I would ask that you go to the publication and find out for yourself all the different units and where they were going, who was in charge of them. Bad weather on D-Day was to haunt the 1st Cavalry throughout Operation Pegasus. Seldom were air mobile moves feasible much before 1300 or 1 o'clock. Good weather was considered to be any condition when the ceiling was above 500 feet and slant range visibility was more than 1.5 miles. There's several pages in between here, but I'm going to skip forward to my part that I was involved in. With the 1st Battalion, 8th Cavalry, commanded by Lieutenant Colonel Christian W., air assaulting into landing zone snapper due south of Quezon, overlooking Highway 9. The circle began to close around the enemy. The heaviest contact on that date occurred in the 3rd Brigade's area of operation, as the 2nd Battalion, 7th Cavalry, under the inspired leadership of Colonel Robinson, continued its drive west on Highway 9. Enemy blocking along the highway offered stubborn resistance. In a day-long battle which ended with an enemy summarily abandoning his position and fled, the battalion had accounted for 83 enemy killed, 1 prisoner of war captured, and 121 individual and 10 crew-served weapons captured. The troops of the 1st Cavalry Division were airlifted to Hill 471, relieving the Marines at this position. This was the first relief of the defenders of Quezon. We had plotted heavy enemy artillery that had been dug deeply into the rocks of the Ko-Rock Mountains in Laos, just west of Lang Bay. As we neared Quezon, I was concerned that these 152 millimeter guns could bring our landing zones under fire at any time. But we were forbidden to cross the border, and the heaviest artillery bombs could not dislodge these positions. They remained a threat throughout Pegasus. The 1st Cavalry forces on landing zone Snapper, which was in my battalion, were attacked by enemy forces using mortars, hand grenades, and rocket launchers. The attack was a disaster for the enemy, and 20 were killed. At 1320, the 84th Company of the Vietnamese 8th Airborne Battalion was airlifted by 1st Cavalry Division aircraft into the Quezon combat base and linked up with elements of the 37th Ranger Battalion. The lift was conducted without incident and was marked as the official link-up in forces at Quezon. On the 7th of April, the South Vietnamese Airborne Task Force air assaulted 3 battalions into positions north of the road and east of Quezon to block escape routes towards the Laotian border. Fighting throughout the area was sporadic as the enemy attempted to withdraw. American and South Vietnamese units began picking up significant quantities of abandoned weapons and equipment. At 0800 on 8th of April, the relief of Khe Sanh was effected and the 1st Cavalry Division became the new landlord. This time it became increasingly evident through lack of contact and the large amounts of new equipment being found indiscriminately abandoned on the battlefield that the enemy had fled the area rather than face certain defeat. He was totally confused by the swift, bold, and many-pronged attacks. On the morning of the 10th of April, General Tolson received orders from General Rossin to make plans to extract the division as soon as possible to prepare for an air assault into the A Shaw Valley. The decision to expedite our withdrawal immediately upon completing our primary mission, the relief of Khe Sanh, was predicated on a long-range forecast which predicted April as the last possible time for air assaults operations in the A Shaw Valley before the heavy monsoon rains. 1st Cavalry Division led to his defeat, forced withdrawal, and eventual rout from the battlefield. The enemy was helpless and confused, suffered great losses of men and equipment, and failed in his mission to block the delayed relief of Khe Sanh. No summation of Operation Pegasus would be complete without mention of the great team effort of all the services, Army, Navy, Marines, and Air Force. The operation was an ideal example of the synchronization of massive B-52 strikes, tactical air support, and artillery firepower with ground maneuver. The South Vietnamese gave a splendid performance. The fact that we were able to coordinate all of these operations in a single headquarters was a commander's dream. For the first time, the cavalry had made an air assault as a division entity. Every committed battalion came into combat by helicopter. In 15 days, the division had entered 180 air mobility, the area of operations, defeated the enemy, relieved Khe Sanh, and had been extracted from the assault only to the assault again 4 days later into the heart of the North Vietnamese Army's bastion in the A Shaw Valley. Thank you.